Hello, and welcome to Joomla Development 101. In this lecture, we're going to be discussing plugin creation a bit more and discuss specifically plugin triggers and plugin implementations. By implementations, we're going to be referring to two different types, one being implementing within a Joomla user site, and secondly, how we can implement distribution of our plugin. We're also going to look at language file creation, as that's something that we haven't yet covered in our previous plugin lectures. So let's begin by looking at Joomla plugin triggers. We had discussed Joomla triggers previously just a little bit early on, but let's revisit them now in a little bit more detail. Let's look at an example. We're going to instantiate the dispatcher, JEvent dispatcher get instance. Then what we're going to do is trigger a function on content after delete. And we're going to pass that function an array with the context and the table. Now this code would be placed anywhere throughout the Joomla code base. It's not handled in the plugin, it's actually handled where you want to trigger the plugin from. The trigger on content after delete will then pass in the values of context and table. Those values are not unique. They're not the same for every single trigger type. So it depends on the type of trigger what that second array value is going to contain. In this example, it contains the context and the table object. In another example, it may contain the context and the data object. So keep in mind that the specific trigger is what defines what values are going to be passed into it. Next, let's look at plugin implementation. And as I mentioned, we're going to talk about a couple of different implementation techniques. First, we're going to talk about keyword documentation. We want to make sure that any keywords that the user is going to have to use with our plugin is well documented and easy for them to find. It's important to note here that the plugin we have created, Link Protect, does use keywords. However, plugins do not have to have keywords. Plugins are run automatically based on the trigger word, and they are called from the Joomla codebase. We don't have to use keywords for any sort of functionality within the content article or any other type of plugin. We are using keywords in this case to handle some unique instances. One being when the client or user does not want the plugin to run on a content item. And second of all, we use a keyword when we want to replace the keyword with the original external link. So it's important to remember that keywords should be well documented, but do not have to be required. Secondly, if our plugin gives options to the end user, you need to make sure that every possible combination of those options has been tested to work and work completely. And lastly, a different type of implementation would be our distribution methods. How are we going to get our code out there for other people to use? There are a couple of common methods, the first being your own website. You can easily place the zipped package on your website and allow users to download that for installation. Secondly, and most commonly, is the Joomla extension directory. You can send your extension into the Joomla extension directory, or JED, and have it listed in the appropriate category. Lastly, you can also use other third-party marketplaces, such as Code Canyon or other possible options. What we want to look at right now is a live review of our plugin keywords, and as a result, we need to focus on our language creation because that's something that we haven't yet done for our plugin. And since now we're going to look at documenting our keywords, we want to make sure that all the language files are correct and in place. Then we'll review different combinations, test our plugin to make sure, and your plugin will be complete. So now, let's look at our language file creation. We're going to switch to our IDE, and here what I've done is I've split my IDE window into two so that I can easily see my plugin files and my language files. You will remember that I have two language files specified, a .ini and a .sys.ini. These two different file types are going to make it easy for me to define content and language strings for different use cases. First, let's look at the .sys.ini. If you'll remember, the .sys.ini file runs every single time a page is loaded in the admin panel of the Joomla website. So these are simply language strings I want to make sure are fully accessible even if the user is not on my specific plugin page. I'm going to start by creating a slight header similar to what we've done before with our other files, only now it's important to note that I am inside a language file or .ini file. As a result, my language file lines that are supposed to be commented will be starting a bit differently with the semicolon instead of as a PHP comment in my other files. Once I've created the little header, what I'm going to do next is define those language strings that need to be accessible from anywhere. First, and most importantly, we'll want to make sure that our plugin name is available everywhere. Secondly, we'll want to also make sure that our plugin description is available everywhere. And here I'm simply going to put a short description of what my plugin does so that users will understand what the plugin is when they are enabling it. Saving that, and I have successfully done the first of the two language files. The second language file will be a bit longer because I'm going to have to make sure that every possible language string is covered. So I'm going to use the same heading and then what I'm going to do is define a few more variables. And the reason I have split my screen is so that it's easy for me to see which language strings I need to make sure I include. Obviously the name, which is going to stay the same. I'm going to actually do a different description here. By doing a longer description here, I'm able to define those keywords, which, as I mentioned earlier, is an important part. Make sure that the keywords are easily identified. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to write a bit of content that accurately describes what the plugin is, as well as how to use the keywords. You will notice, if you look at my description, that I am including HTML tags. With Joomla, you are able to use HTML tags within your language strings. Next, I'm going to scroll down through my XML file and pick up a couple more of the strings that are going to be necessary. I'm going to need one for the label, one for the description for each of my options. And then describe each one of these. The label is going to be used when the user is looking at the options in the admin panel. The description is going to show when they hover over the label. So my description can be a bit longer and more descriptive, if you will, of what that option is supposed to be for. Once I've done those language strings, I can save the file. The next thing to do is to navigate to the admin panel of the website, and we can see if they show correctly. Going to the plugin manager, I can now see that I have Content Link Protect showing correctly for the name, and a description that also includes the keywords. This will allow the user to not only quickly see what the keywords are supposed to be for, but easily copy and paste for use within their content. If I go to Basic Options, I also see that my warning page and new window text is also available, as well as the description that appears with each. So now we have successfully implemented our language files throughout the plugin. The last thing that we're going to want to look at is how the plugins are actually used within the content. So if we go to the Article Manager and we go to Creating Your Site again, remember that this was the site that we had previously added one external link and one internal link to. Now what we want to do is we want to place the plugin code that says do not run the plugin on this content item. So that's curly brace link protect equal off. Now we can save this and go to the home page and refresh the page. We still see that we have our internal URL, and it is still pointing internally as it should. And the Joomla URL, if I hover over that, will also be directly pointing to the external page. Clicking on that will load up the other page immediately. What this means is that our link protect equal off keyword has been triggered successfully. If we take the keyword out and save the page again, come to the home page and refresh, hovering over Joomla, I now see that my URL is indeed running the plugin correctly. Clicking on it shows me that I am now on the warning page as I desire to be. So we have successfully tested that the plugin trigger is functioning successfully, that the keyword for not running on a certain page is working successfully. The last thing we want to do is to check the second option in regards to whether or not to open it in a new window. If I say no and save and close, I come back and I refresh this page. Clicking on Joomla takes me to the external page. Clicking on this link should open the URL in the same browser window. And we can see that it does. If I hit the back button, it takes me back to my site. So now we've tested both options and have shown that indeed the plugin is working as it's supposed to, and both keywords and both triggers are working as they should. The last thing I said that we would do is look at the extensions directory for Joomla. If we go to the Joomla extensions directory, here you will see a list of random new extensions, a variety of categories, new and noteworthy, and a lot of other options that are available to you. From here, you can very easily create an account and upload your extension. As you can see, the JED is currently serving over 7,000 extensions, and yours can be the next one that gets added. Now you've had opportunity to see how to create a plugin language file, how to use the triggers and test to make sure that everything has been implemented successfully, and you are ready to upload your first plugin to the Joomla extensions directory. I hope you found these lectures on plugin creation to be easy to follow, and you are well on your way to creating your first plugin.